Hi everyone, Deputy Chief Don Nelson, Summit Fire Department. Welcome to another episode of With Summit Fire. I'm always getting questions about why do so many fire trucks show up at a fire scene when we actually have a fire. So I want to go over today what goes through an officer's mind when he arrives at a building that could possibly be on fire. So we're filming in downtown Summit today, so it's pretty busy, some people walking by, so pardon the interruptions. But we're at the corner of Maple Street and Springfield. I'm sure you drive by this intersection numerous times during the week or the day, and you don't pay attention to these buildings around you. But our job as firefighters is to pay attention to those buildings. So behind me is a rather large building that I remember growing up in town, going here to buy clothes with my parents. My mom always used to take me here to buy clothes. That was a long time ago. But now it was a large department store back then. Now it's been divided into multiple stores. But as a fire officer responding to a building, there's multiple things that are running through our mind. And that starts with the initial alarm. When the alarm goes off at the firehouse and they give us an address, and in this case, 402 Springfield Avenue, we're thinking about the building. Now, some of the younger guys may not know the building. Some of the older guys like myself do know the building. So we share that information as much as we can. Let me back up a little bit. We do a lot of stuff that's called pre-planning. We go out and look at these buildings. So back to when the alarm goes off. That pre-planning comes into play. Guys go out, they see the building, they kind of remember different ideas about the building. But here's the deal. You pull out of the building, the alarm goes off, you pull out of the building, dispatch is rattling off hydrant locations, building locations, anything pertinent to the construction of the building. The officer's listening to that. He's also directing the other guys on the crew, which way to go. Like right now, Maple Street's closed for these fantastic restaurants to be outside. However, it does impede our response. So are we coming from Summit Avenue? Are we coming from Morris Avenue? Those are all things that are relayed on that initial alarm when the alarm goes off. So now the officer and the other units are responding to the scene, and they're trying to deal with traffic, weather. Is there snow on the ground? Is it raining? Is there a hurricane going through town? Is it school time? Is it rush hour? Those are all things that the officers and firefighters responding to calls have to deal with. So once we arrive on scene, as you can see, there's traffic everywhere, so we have to deal with traffic, okay? Then we have to figure out, when we get to the building, what's the problem? Obviously, if we pull up on scene and we see people pointing, which happens, we kind of know we have a problem. If we pull up on scene and nothing's going on and we can hear an alarm, we know there's a fire alarm going off, so we gotta figure out why the fire alarm's going off. If it's the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody out here, is there anything visual on the outside that's giving us an idea of why the fire alarm's going off or why somebody called? Those are all things the officer's thinking about initially. All right, so some of the other things that an officer, when arriving on scene, has to think about is, are there things in the building that will help us? Is there a sprinkler system? Is there a standpipe system? Is there, let's say there's a kitchen in the building, is there a hood system that might possibly extinguish a fire on the grill? Those are all things that are here to help us, along with the alarm system. And then we have to think about, are there things that are here to hurt us? And I'll talk a little bit about building construction. Is that gonna hurt us? Is there void spaces, things like that? Is the building chopped up a lot? Those are all things that can hurt us. So those are some of the things that an officer has to think about when he arrives on scene. All right, so as you can see now, we're in the back of the building, and it's a little bit different than the front. As you can see, it's got different roof lines for the different buildings. The one on the left, is what is the Woodland Day Spa, right? And then as you work your way to the right and come over to this brick corner here and this little brick area here, that's all part of the same building. So from the back, it's a little bit different than the front. A couple more obstacles, but nothing that we can't overcome. The one problem back here is access for our ladder truck. We have a small alley here and a small alley to my right, which comes off of Springfield Avenue. Very hard to get a ladder truck back here, so a lot of this might be ground ladders. But as you can see, the front of the building is always different from the front. But the back of the building is always different from the front, and a few more obstacles. Then once he's outside and he establishes his command post out in front of the building, he has to send personnel into the building. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, how do we get in? Is there a Knox box? A Knox box is a little key box bolted to the side of the building that has keys to get into the building. If they don't have a Knox box, do we have to force entry? We try not to, but if there's an alarm going off, or let's say there's smoke in the window, we got to get inside, okay? So those are some things that initially have to happen. The officer's also thinking about building construction. I'm going to give you a little funny saying here. You know, people build buildings so they last a long time. However, Mother Nature has something totally different going on. She wants to knock buildings down. Between wind, rain, sun, storms, all Mother Nature wants to do is knock that building down. And fire is part of Mother Nature's realm. So if there's a fire in the building, it wants to burn that building down, okay? So once we get here and we find out what's going on, now we have to send people into the building to figure out where the problem is. During the day, there's usually somebody around to help guide us through the building. At night, there's nobody here. So this particular building behind me, and the family was nice enough, the Modell family was nice enough to let us film out front and talk about their building. It's been compartmentized. There's offices up on the 4th floor, there's retail on the 1st floor, the whole back of the building's all different exits and entrances for emergency reasons. But now we're inside the building and we have to find out where that alarm's going off. Is it in the basement? Is it on the 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor? So let's jump the scenario forward. Let's say it is a working structure fire. We pull up on scene, there's smoke blowing out of the building, and we're pulling up with our 2 engines and a truck, and we have a full shift of 7 people. It's going to be pretty difficult for us to handle that fire initially and long term. So this gets back to that initial question, why are there so many fire trucks on the scene? We have what's called automatic aid with Springfield and Milburn. On any reported smoke or fire in the structure, they are automatically dispatched. And that provides us with more personnel on the scene to handle the emergency. Now think about this. This building's on the corner of Springfield and Maple. If you're familiar with downtown Summit at all, you know there's the Promenade Park down there. Well, the Promenade used to be a building back in the 60s. Unfortunately, it had a fire and was never reconstructed. If you go down Maple Street, there's an alley. So we kind of have fire breaks. However, as a career officer, my job is to make sure that fire doesn't spread from the building of origin to the neighboring buildings or the exposures. So that's why we call in a lot of resources. I would rather have more resources on scene and not need them than to need them and not have them. So a couple months ago, we had a little incident on Maple Street where there was a lot of fire trucks. And a lot of the questions I got, why are there so many towns here? That's why. This building has all kinds of, well, any building in town for that matter, has all kinds of nooks and crannies and stuff built into it just from many renovations. Every tenant might put in a lower ceiling, lower ceiling, lower ceiling. Then there's room above that. If a fire gets up there, it could spread from building to building. So our job is to get inside with as many personnel as we can, check those void spaces, check the occupancies next door, make sure fire is not spreading to other buildings. And to do that, we need people. And you know, Summit has a very well-staffed fire department, but we can only do so much. So we call for mutual aid, and that's why we end up with so many engines on scene. All right. Think about water supply. Downtown Summit has a hydrant within 500 feet of each other, basically on every corner in town. But you know, if I take too much water off of one hydrant, I may have to go to another hydrant someplace else because I'm tapping too much water out of that water supply. Think about the exposures. What other buildings are around? This building has exposures on Maple Street. All right, and then again, it has the promenade, but just across the promenade, maybe 25 feet, is another building. We don't want fire to jump to that building. So having a lot of people on scene is instrumental to make sure we can get our job accomplished as quickly as possible. Again, back to this building. Is the alarm coming from the yoga store? Is it coming from the building the section of the building under construction? Is it coming from the Village store, which is now a day spa? I'm showing my age here because it used to be called the Village store, but now it's a Woodland Day Spa. Is it coming from there? Those are all things we have to figure out. And as the officer in charge, my job is to make sure that we get to figure out where the problem is and how can we best resolve that. And by doing that, if there's really actually a structure fire, it takes people. And there's nothing replaces firefighters. We have to have firefighters. So imagine this. We pull up, I'm the officer in charge, and I have fire pouring out of that window up there. So I have to get people up there to the floor below. First floor, make sure everything's okay. Up on the roof, in case we have to ventilate. Got to put ladders up. Got to get water supply established. Got to make sure there's no life safety. That's our number one job, is make sure there's nobody in the building. So we have to do a search. And all that takes people. Now, on a beautiful day like today, the weather's not a problem. But go back a couple weeks ago when we had a storm, or even back on September 1st, we had that Ida pass through with the rain and everything. That creates a problem. If it's a hot day, I have to cycle people through. I have to rotate firefighters through. So I have to have a lot of people in reserve to replace those that I am rotating through. So one of the things I do want to get across is that when we call for help, it's because we think we need it. We don't just do it, for fun. We need people to help us out, and we respond to other towns as well. If they have a large fire or a large incident, we'll go to their town and help them out as well. So hopefully, I got some of that point across as to why we call additional towns in and why there's always so many fire trucks at a fire scene. As I said before, it's always better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. All right, so thanks for watching. And HTTV, I want to thank you very much for supporting the Summit Fire Department and with Summit Fire. Well, I think it's been probably, 9 years maybe, something like that. Chief Joe Houck started that, and it's carried through with Chief Evers. So on a more somber note, this will be my last episode. I'm retiring. So hopefully moving along, the new Deputy Chief, Paul Mbimbo, carries the reins and films some shows for you. So thanks for watching and stay safe.